Hello, everyone. Hopefully, you can hear us and see us. We'll be starting in just a second. Let me know how our audio balance is. Am I too loud? Is Dan too quiet? Or vice versa? Dan, say hi. It's okay. Concentrating. So, yeah, please let me know how the balance is. I know last week there were a few complaints, and that's because nobody in the live chat, told me the audio was off. Dan is silent. Of course he is. Okay,
Yeah,
now you can
sorry.
hear him.
Sorry. I'm trying to, save my voice here because I'm a little tired of talking.
Yeah, all right. So, yeah, let me know now if you should be able to hear him now.
Let's just keep doing this for the whole podcast. Are we balanced now? Are we balanced now?
Are we balanced now?
Are we balanced
How,
now?
how about now?
Guys, how do we sound? Are we balanced now?
How do we sound? Is it good? There we go. Sound good? Okay. Everyone's saying it's fine. So people listening after, if you say the audio is off, it's not my fault. Okay. It's the chat's fault.
All right, the tweet is sent. Let me send one from my account. All right, Twitter is done. I get the voice recorder. I am now recording.
I'm now recording as well.
3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 296 for January 20th, 2023. Hey everyone, Deanna Rubino here, joining Zach Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows Central Podcast. This week we got quite a lot of Microsoft news, some of it not really great either, but yes, there were layoffs at Microsoft. In fact, the entire tech industry is not doing well for jobs right now. We'll talk a little bit about Windows 12 plus AI, what that can mean and what we're expecting. Windows 11 news, of course, with those insider updates. Zach's Windows Unshipped series, which talks about things that just never came with Windows that were being worked on. And I had an editorial about Microsoft and e-ink and why I think they're kind of missing the boat here on this technology. Maybe they should do something with it. And there'll probably be some other breaking stories that we may sprinkle in, depending if we think about it during the podcast. Zach, how are you doing on this fine Friday?
I am not too bad. How are you?
Well, it's snowing, which is annoying, but that's my fault. I live in Massachusetts, so I should be used to it. The thing is, I used to like not care about snow so much, but now I have a dog, and it's a little annoying. So when I have to
Yeah.
go out in the snow, but at least it looks really nice out there. So, but it's been a long week. Some of it not good. I guess let's get right into it. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, the big news, Microsoft layoffs. There was a rumor earlier this week that they're going to lay off 11,000 people. And the good news is they're only laying off 10,000, which is definitely a lot. It's around 5% of their workforce. And it's Microsoft is not alone here. In fact, following that news, Google announced it's laying off 12,000 people, or 6% of its workforce. Amazon is laying off 18,000 people, but they have 1.5 million people working for them. So it's only about 1.2% of their workforce. But nonetheless, 18,000 people is a lot. So those percentages, are quite deceptive. And then Vox Media is also apparently laying off around 7%, which is around 130 employees. So as the tech industry sort of shrinks with fears of recession slash post-pandemic and consumers pulling back on spending, everything in tech is pulling back. And the effect, of course, is media is pulling back as well. So there have been other reports of other newspapers and everything also facing layoffs. So this is sort of an interesting and unfortunate change in events. I will say the larger economic picture, though, is still positive, at least for the United States. That is, other industries are not facing layoffs. In fact, some are still having a shortage of workers. It just seems to be tech is facing this problem, which is kind of unfortunate. Zach, what are your kind of thoughts about this?
It is really quite sad, especially seeing some people who, we know being laid off. The gaming side of things were hit specifically quite hard, which is really unfortunate. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But it is interesting that tech is really the only one suffering from this currently. And that's because of pandemic, right? When the pandemic started and lockdown came into effect, tech companies hired and they started hiring more than ever. I think Microsoft added 30,000 employees over the course of the pandemic. And now the pandemic is, air quotes, over. Lockdowns are done. People are going back to the office. There's less incentive for these tech companies to, have this many employees. So now they need to start letting go of a lot of the additional people they hired over that time. So it is really unfortunate. It's really sad. But yeah, like as I mentioned, so the gaming sector. So Microsoft does say that these layoffs are starting now and will continue through the end of March. So there's 2 or so months of layoffs to take place. They said 11,000 as 10,000 as Dan mentioned, with I think around 1,000 already being told that they are going to be let go. Maybe more. I'm not too sure on the numbers. But the areas hit so far: 343 Industries, Bethesda, a few in marketing. Microsoft Edge appears to have been hit a bit as well as HoloLens. HoloLens may have been a big one there, and it's really interesting because the press release, I guess, that Microsoft put out when they announced that these layoffs were taking place. They mentioned that as such, we're taking a 1.2 billion charge in Q2 related to severance costs, changes to our hardware portfolio, and the cost of lease consolidation as we create high density across our workspaces. So changes to our hardware portfolio there was one that stood out to a lot of people. A lot of people instantly assumed, oh, that means Surface is on the chopping block, or at least parts of Surface were. And I'm not too convinced that's what that means. I honestly think what they're referring to there is more on the HoloLens side of things. HoloLens has not been doing too well in the last year. They don't really have a market currently. Well, they do. They have their little niche, which is their business customers. But in regards to the future and where HoloLens is going, they really don't have a vision there, especially since Alex Kipman left. All those reports around mismanagement of the HoloLens business. So I'm pretty sure that hardware changes to the hardware portfolio refer to HoloLens. Now, of course, the Surface devices may not be unaffected, but I don't think we're going to see cancellations of entire Surface product lines. At most, I think what we're going to see is the schedule shift around. So perhaps a few products that were planned for this year may be pushed to next year, or a few that were on the docket for next year will be pushed to the year after, just so Microsoft can, I guess, attempt to avoid this potential recession, I want to call it. I don't know if we can actually call it a recession yet, whatever the actual terminology is, but half of these layoffs are happening because Microsoft wants to avoid, suffering from a recession, and releasing, super premium, super expensive Surface PCs during a recession was probably not going to go well for Microsoft. So instead of cancelling lines, I think at most we're just going to see things shift around. And sort of, I guess, get delayed is more likely, rather than outright, chopping block for Surface Studio, chopping block for Surface Hub, chopping block for Surface Duo. Because I know the first thing I saw people asking me was, does this mean the Duo is dead? And I don't think the Duo is dead. I guess, like I said, Microsoft is very eager to continue building Android hardware, and so I don't think these layoffs here mean that the Duo is on the chopping block, at least not yet.
I mean, to put it in perspective, this Surface division is really tiny. The hardware effort by Microsoft in terms of headcount and expenditures is not a lot compared to everything else it does. It's a really small, tight division. Canceling Duo in the grand scheme of things of financials of the company is so minuscule. It's just, it's not a big deal. But again, Microsoft isn't a hardware company. They merely release these devices to sort of set the bar for the rest of the PC industry. So I don't see why they would necessarily pull back in terms of engineering efforts. They will pull back in advertising and promotional efforts 100%, right? That is absolutely going to happen. You won't see probably any more Surface commercials on TV, for instance. I think that's a given. But so you'll see the periphery around Surface reduce, but the core teams and everything will remain in place. I see someone's bringing up the story, which I find kind of stupid, that Microsoft hosted the Sting concert privately before the preceded layoffs happened. So this was at Davos, and yeah, there was a Sting concert, and Microsoft apparently paid for it, and it happened before the layoff. Listen, this is like the dumb crap, no offense, that people fall for with media. Yeah, I get it. It doesn't look good. But Microsoft is still a company that needs to function. for one, that concert, I guarantee, wasn't booked last week. It was probably booked months ago, at least 3, 4, maybe 6 months ago. It was set up, so they're not going to cancel that because they have layoffs. They still need to function as a company. They're going to still spend money on things that people will be like, yeah, but you could spend that on, employing people. But just paying salaries for people where there's no demand for the thing that they were making is not exactly smart use of the money. So I find this sort of like, but this is like the stuff that people click on, right? This is that makes the headlines, even though it has literally nothing to do with the bottom line of Microsoft. Now, we can discuss the idea like maybe they shouldn't be laying off 10,000 people. I can't really make that decision. I don't see their finances. I don't know what the numbers are. I will say it is a go-to thing for any corporation that when they're starting to face rough financial times. Don't forget, Microsoft has its earnings next week, which may be worse than we anticipated. That dumping people is often seen as like the quick remedy to save money. And it is. Human capital is one of the biggest expenditures of any company. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. And, it will be interesting to see if this stuff comes back to bite Microsoft. As I opened the podcast with, I noted that Google is laying off 12,000, Amazon is laying off 18,000. And that doesn't justify it. It just goes to show that Microsoft isn't the rare bird here doing something unusual in this market. Of course, I want everybody to, I'm never happy with corporate America and how they handle these things, but this is the system all Americans have signed up for. So, no offense, as soon as you start to criticize corporate America, you're labeled a socialist or a communist. So apparently we can't have that debate in this country. So this is the system people signed up for. It's what your taxes pay for. It's what you vote for. And so that's the system. If we want to talk about having a more humanistic economy that's not based around that, we could do it. But you're going to be probably labeled something else. So I guess we just have to stick to the guardrails of our society and say, this is just the way things are. And having said that, there are Ben Rudolph was laid off. Now, Ben Rudolph should be a familiar name to anyone who's covered Windows Phone or has used Windows Phone. He was on the Windows Phone team very early on. He did the Smoke by Windows Phone campaign. I've known him for a decade now, over a decade, and have interacted with quite a bit. There's actually a video floating around of him showing me Krav Maga moves and throwing me out of bed or something. That's a whole other thing. But really nice dude. He's moved around the company for over the last few years. He was just he had a really high position up there, but his entire team got laid off, including himself as well. And he's got a large family, and it's just that personal effect is real, right? I mean, this isn't just some abstract number for us. These are a lot of people and friends, and we've lost been quite a few people you and I have known over the years who have now either left Microsoft on their own, which, okay, good luck to them, Godspeed. But then there's people who were let go, who are like, really? They let that person go? It is weird I think for Ben, just because he's been with the company for 15 years and he's a smart guy and delivers often results. But this is it's a terrible thing. And now, did you really go into the 343 interactive thing?
Yeah, I did want to jump into that as well. So as I mentioned, gaming was hit particularly hard, which is quite interesting considering Microsoft is currently attempting to buy Activision and onboard a whole bunch more employees. But so 343 Industries and Bethesda, I think, were hit quite hard. 343 Industries, I know more about. I think they've had over 100 layoffs, which is massive. I think they've lost a third of their workforce, which is a big deal. And it's not good for 343 Industries, and it's not good for Halo Infinite, which is the product that they are currently maintaining, because Halo Infinite is not in a good place. It hasn't been since launch. They've been trying to build out that game and make it better, but they've just been moving really slowly, and losing a third of their workforce is just going to really slow that down. They've lost Joseph Staten, who was brought in to sort of right the ship for Halo Infinite. Perhaps his work is done, and he's now able to move on. He wasn't laid off from Microsoft, I should say. Staten was moved out of it for 343 Industries. He's been moved back to the Xbox side of things. That's where he was before, and now he's just sort of gone back. So you could look at it like, he came into 343 to try and fix things. He's done what he could do, and now he's moving back. But who knows whether or not that means Halo Infinite's going to be better soon. Some reporting online suggests that 343 Industries is only going to focus on the multiplayer aspect of Halo going forward. There'll be no story DLC, which is shocking to me. Halo, the best part of Halo in my eyes is the story. But yeah, so it's really, really not looking good for Halo and 343 Industries. But on the bright side, I guess, is that maybe they're going to move the Halo IP to around, so it won't just be 343 making Halo stuff anymore. They could move it to Certain Affinity or other studios under the Xbox umbrella to make their own Halo games. That would be nice. Because really, 343 alone, I don't think can handle it anymore. They just can't, and they fumbled this quite badly. But
yeah, we saw some inside remarks from people that work there, which we can't share publicly, but it's ugly. A lot of blaming of management, which shouldn't be a surprise. Microsoft, for all the cool stuff they do, still has a old school sort of corporate managerial stuff where you find this almost in any major corporation, I think, but Microsoft's been, guilty of this for a very long time, where they kind of work against each other's divisions, and you have people in there that's been there for 30 years, and they're just more concerned about, keeping their jobs and their revenue coming in, and not necessarily, when it comes to gaming, you can't just have corporate stooges there, right? Gaming's a passion. Gaming is art. It is fundamentally an art project that is done by really passionate people on the lower levels who are creating all this stuff. And you're supposed to have a storyteller and all that. But as soon as you get the bean counters in there, and there needs to be, right? Because costs can absolutely run out of control for gaming. Yet it's just like making a movie. But as soon as you get people in charge who aren't invested as much into the whole thing, like you start to lose your track. And I think that's kind of what happened here. It's a real shame. Like I never got into Halo. And when it started, I remember when I started getting into Microsoft, it was around, stuff like that, but it was pretty late in the series as it was. But when I kind of started getting interested, it was right when it started nosediving as an IP. And that's just kind of a shame. And what makes it even more damaging is the fact that who did they lose years ago? The Bungie team. And what's Bungie doing? Yeah. Destiny 2. And remember when Destiny came out, people were like, oh, it's all right, whatever, da-da-da-da. It gets repetitive. And I remember I was playing Destiny. I'm like, this thing's awesome. And then Destiny 2 came out, and I was like, this thing is pretty great. And I don't play Destiny much anymore because the story is so absurdly complicated. It's really hard to get back into it. But it's because that story is so overtly complicated. It's like World of Warcraft. They just built a myth around this thing that's so rich, and they just keep expanding the story that people keep going back and doing the same thing over and over again. And I love the mechanics of that game. Imagine if Destiny 2 was an IP of Microsoft, right? Technically, at one point, it could have been, but it isn't. And now they got Halo. Halo's a dead property. You and I have questions, people going, oh, is Cortana going to come back as an AI thing? Like, why would it? They killed it with the Windows Phone thing and trying to bring it to PC and Xbox. So the brand is kind of dead there. And it's even now more dead because Halo as a brand and IP is kind of dead. So it's like, no, they should never mention Cortana, unfortunately, again, which is a shame. But this is what kind of happens.
I should really mention real quick, because I don't know if I clarified, that the Halo moving to other studios is a rumor that's not been confirmed or announced by anyone official. It's just the rumor is that they will be able to move. They're planning to move Halo to other studios so multiple developers can get involved and build Halo games, not just 343. Just a rumor at this time. I also do want to mention, I guess maybe there was a bit of a silver lining to these layoffs in that the people who are being laid off are, as far as I'm aware, getting a comfortable severance package. I think they have 60 days to find a new role, and that can even be at Microsoft. There are, Microsoft, although I think they've said they're on a hiring freeze, there are still roles that they are hiring for, and if you are being laid off, you may be a good fit for another role at the company, and you may even be able to get first dibs at applying for that job role. And for those who aren't able to find another role at Microsoft, they will have 60 days, as I mentioned, to find a job elsewhere. They get a nice severance package and
the 60 days notice and all that. Yeah, they're really maximizing the, hey, if we're going to lay you off, we're going to give you the max package that we can kind of. So at least that's good, but still.
Yeah, but that's the layoff news. Hopefully that's the last layoff news we have to talk about.
It won't be.
I know.
Absolutely won't
I can be
I'm telling you, surely. It's going to get worse. You're going to hear, I don't think it's going to affect the national economy. Like I said from the beginning of the podcast, that the economy in terms of jobs is still doing actually quite well, and it's predicted it will. And that's what's kind of confounding a lot of economists, because typically when you start to go into recession, you get, especially coming out of inflation, you start to have like people can't afford things and then people lose jobs, demand goes down. But we're having kind of a really weird kind of economy here. Luckily, they're predicting, the latest I heard was a mild recession, which is still not great, but it's better than a severe recession or a long lasting one. So hopefully, this won't be bad. It is a temporary thing, we should point out, like all things. This won't be like 2008 or, when the dot-com bubble burst. I think uh, technology is just way too important. And I think the economy, once it rights itself, you're going to start to see investment again in all the space, and it's going to come back, and they'll start hiring again. Uh, but I think there's a lot of uncertainty in the world right now. You saw the Ukraine mess, which is not going anywhere, and in fact, maybe getting even worse. So, that's causing a lot of panic amongst people. And yeah, I don't know. I think 2023 is going to be rough. I think it's going to be rough for media and our jobs. I
Yeah.
think it's going to be rough for tech companies. I wouldn't be surprised if there's another round of layoffs later in the year, but hope for the best, pray for, and see what happens there. So
In that case, I hope 2024 is better.
we all do. So hopefully it will, but yeah, 2023 is going to be interesting. Yeah, I mean, even like, PCs and laptops have nosedive, which shouldn't be surprising, right? I mean, once the pandemic is kind of over and everybody got saturated, everybody's got a PC now. We talked about that last time. Like, it's not like you're going to go out and buy a new laptop every year. Uh, so it's still higher than it was pre-pandemic, but unfortunately, we're going to see a contraction there as well. The good news is enterprise is still heavily reliant on these technologies, and we're starting to see, still a lot of innovation there. We just talked about Lenovo last week, for instance, who had some really remarkable announcements, but we'll talk a little bit more about some of that stuff later on in the podcast as well. All right, let's move to Windows 12 and AI. What's this all about, Zach? So AI has been, of course, in the news with
Yeah.
OpenAI. I did a story this week, which I'll just throw out there. It's kind of interesting, called "The Human Cost Behind ChatGPT is Worse Than You Think." And it was a story, actually, investigative report done by Time. And, basically shows that to make ChatGPT safe, that is, when you go on there and type stuff, so it doesn't spew back racist things or homophobic things or just really nasty content, they create another set of AI tools, and those AI tools go through ChatGPT's database, basically, of knowledge it's collecting, and filters out things so it doesn't go into ChatGPT. But to create those initial tools, you need human beings to actually tell the system, that's bad, that's good, that's bad, that's good. And unfortunately, that works for imagery as well as text. So there was a story this week about Sama. It was a company out in San Francisco that a lot of companies, including Microsoft, hire. And then they employed people in Nigeria for, they were, hyping $1.32 an hour. And as Americans, we're like, oh my God, that's terrible. And it's like, yeah, if you're an American, $1.32 is terrible. But in Nigeria, $1.32 is about the pay of a school teacher. I'm not saying, it shouldn't be more. Sure, people should always be paid more, but I'm not saying it's like poverty levels either. And so the story came out. They had this contract, and these people were assigned basically text, and they had to go through it all and label things so that the OpenAI could then feed it into ChatGPT and train those systems. Then they were later tasked with a new project that doesn't relate to ChatGPT, that has to do with OpenAI in general, but it was labeling images, because there's a lot of terrible images on the internet. And so they need to train the systems to filter those out, including sexual abuse and violence and just the worst of the worst. And some of that stuff was actually illegal under US law. So you can't even like look at that stuff to tag it, which causes a whole other problems. But then this company, Sama, backed out of the contract and said, we don't want to work with OpenAI. This stuff is just, it's too. And of course, employees who are working there, they see and read the most horrible things on the internet 8 hours a day. And they did have psychological assistance and all that kind of stuff, and they were paid kind of decently, but it's still a human toll on this. Facebook had a similar story years ago. They had the same
Yeah,
problem. So
I
I just
remember
want to
that.
give that as a precursor to all this, that, yeah, there's a human cost to technology, just like the batteries that power all our devices are supposedly, being mined by children. It's just like, it's really terrible stuff that I think people should at least be aware of.
Yeah.
Even though I don't know what the solution here is. You do need people to do this job initially, with the idea and goal someday that AI will be on its own and be able to handle it, and humans will never have to look at that stuff. But anyway, Zach, with that opening, what's going on with Windows 12 and AI?
Well, Microsoft is investing $10 billion into OpenAI, which was a story that's not new, but we haven't talked about it on the podcast yet, so I did want to mention that. And they're doing that because they want to basically embed AI into all of their products. They've already said that they're planning to bring OpenAI and OpenAI stuff to Microsoft Office, and I believe Panos Panay has sort of mentioned that in addition to the Windows Studio FX, the future will be AI. You know, AI is going to be what powers things to come, and by that the assumption is he's talking about the next version of Windows. We call it Windows 12 currently, but it might not be called Windows 12. It could be called anything, could be called nothing, could be a Windows 11 update for all we know. But the 2024 release of Windows is starting to look a lot like a release that's going to focus more on the AI side of things, and that's really quite interesting because, like I said, Windows 11 already has a little bit of AI here and there, like the Windows Studio effects, which, if you don't know, those are the neural processing unit features that you can find in the Surface Pro 9 5G, which can add things like blurred backgrounds or eye correction. It has voice clarity, which will sort of minimize background noise and focus only on your voice. All of that is AI, and it's available right now in Windows 11 if you're using a Surface Pro 9 5G. That is coming to more PCs. Any Windows and ARM device with an HCX Gen 3 or up will be able to do that sort of stuff. AMD has announced that it's also going to be jumping on board with a neural processing unit or something of an equivalent, which will tap into Windows Studio FX. Intel is yet to announce they're going to do this, but Intel could jump on at some point if they really wanted to. And that's just that functionality, that capability, the AI side of things, is just going to keep growing. So Windows 12, for example, while Microsoft hasn't said what kind of AI features will be on the way, I've heard things like being able to open a photo in the Photos app and have the Photos app identify the subject or the item in the image is something that Microsoft is looking at and could pair to AI. This isn't new stuff, by the way. Google's already doing this, right? You know,
right.
Windows for sure is behind, but this is the kind of thing that Microsoft is talking about and kind of what they want to include in Windows in the future. Being able to identify objects and stuff within images, being able to cut out images or copy individual items from an image just by right-clicking it and then dragging it into another app. The iPhone already does that. Maybe in Paint, for example, you'll be able to type into Paint a green farm or something, and it will be able to draw you a basic green farm for you to add to after the fact. Or the snipping tool, take a screenshot of something. The snipping tool itself can identify the text within that screenshot and allow you to copy it to your clipboard or highlight it. Stuff like that, stuff that will just enhance your workflow, is all the sort of stuff Microsoft can do with OpenAI and AI functionalities in general across Windows. And that's the stuff we are going to see, or the kind of stuff at least we are going to see with Windows 12 or the next version of Windows next year. So that's all super interesting stuff, and I'm really curious to see where this goes, because like I said, this isn't technically new. Android and iOS is already doing this. Windows is behind and they're catching up, and I just want to see where they can take it.
Yeah, this is really interesting stuff. Again, like we just did a Ask Windows Central thing where we talked about this as well, and you know, Cortana is not coming back, and I think that we need to get away from this idea of an anthropomorphized AI thing that's like this being that lives on your devices and talks to you. I think that's a popular conception of this stuff, and obviously Apple leaned into it with Siri. Google hasn't really gone down that path, you know, and then of course you have Amazon, they named theirs. But I think what you're going to see is just what you were describing. You're going to see AI. You won't see AI. It's just going to be weaved through these products, and they're going to do these smart little things. And we should be clear here. Some of this is AI, some of it's just machine learning, some of it's both. But yeah, like for instance, on Google Photos, you can just go in there into your photos and just be like, type jelly beans, and it'll just magically find any photo that has jelly beans in it, right? It's really amazing technology. So stuff like that, you know, what Microsoft's going to use AI for is for helping us navigate and sort all the information that's out there. You know, this idea of like, we have tons of emails, you know, my inbox is ridiculous, and sometimes you do a Boolean search for a keyword or someone who sent it to you. that's just the way things are. But now AI can give contextual search, so it can help bring up things you were actually looking for, but maybe didn't get the word right. Because I have this problem all the time with Gmail. I'll try to put in a word and it doesn't get it. Maybe I was a little off on the word, or it was something different, and it can't figure it out. But with AI, you're going to get it so it's just smarter, contextualized, and it understands what you're probably looking for, and it infers from that. And that's really where you're going to see the benefit from this stuff, is being able to
Yeah.
sift through all the information that's around us and make sense of it and make it much easier. And I think that's really exciting. But yeah, don't expect a little hologram thing to pop up in Windows 12 and be like, hi,
Yeah.
I'm here to help you and be your best friend. Like
Well,
that's
like
that.
Her, the movie Her.
Yeah, right. Which I still haven't seen, but I'm aware
You
of
need to
the
see it. It's
yeah.
creepy.
Well, I the thing the thing about her and that idea, I think that will still probably happen, because I
Yeah.
think like independent companies will do that and create a service, because as I said before, humans are, psychopathically social. Like the worst torture you can almost do to someone. I mean, it is physical torture, but mental torture is you just isolate them and let them not talk to
Yeah.
anyone.
It's
People love talking to people, so they're
Yeah,
going to need that.
it's also really interesting that this technology is being called AI. It's the same, when chat assistants
Yeah.
first became a thing, that was also considered AI. Like people called those AI chat assistants, and it's not really AI. Like even this stuff that we're talking about with OpenAI, I'm not convinced it's the AI in the
Well,
movies, because it's not. Like the idea of a self thinking piece of
Well, so that's where
software,
it is. That's where
right?
you're a little bit wrong. Because why this kind of gets the AI label is because with more data it takes in and more interactions, it does grow and become more accurate
Right.
without human intervention. And so that's the idea behind it, that this thing learns and it's going to get better the more and more people use it. And that's where it becomes AI. It's this idea of like it's cyclical machine learning that's used as the mechanism, but ultimately it becomes kind of self-sufficient at some point. So they'll do updates to ChatGPT in the back end, of course, but there's a lot of it that's just going to be, like I said, self-improving. The more people interact with it, the more it's going to learn from that, and the more
Yeah.
it's going to. So that's the
I
difference.
don't know how to put my point across. I'm trying to think of it. So basically, like this AI though is I would describe it as on rails in that it can't think for itself. In that, for example, it couldn't deceive you. It could get something wrong, but it can't purposefully deceive you. It wouldn't think to do that. Whereas a human could. If you're asking me a question and I know the answer, I could be like, I don't want to tell you the answer, so I'll give you a fake answer. This OpenAI stuff, the chat GPT stuff, isn't going to do that. It could be wrong and just present you incorrect information, but it's not going to see your prompt and think about it, come up with an answer and go, I'm not going to tell you the answer. That's the kind of thing I'm going, that's what I'm sort of
Sure.
referring to.
So
True
that's a separate.
intelligence.
Right, but there's a name for that. That's not AI. That's called AGI,
It's called
artificial
Skynet.
general intelligence. Well,
Sure.
artificial general intelligence is that field. That's what
Right.
that is. So AGI is not what ChatGPT is. So you're right in
No,
that sense,
yes.
but no one's saying it is.
No,
There's
okay,
just
sure. Yeah.
AI elements with ChatGPT. AGI is for some the holy grail in all
Yeah.
of this, to make something that mimics human behavior and that can do those kind of things. And we're getting kind of close to that. Remains to be seen, but some are saying the next 10 years AGI could be a thing. And that's where things really start to get a little bit more scary. So we'll have to
That's
have,
when
wait and
that's when
see.
the robots can take over if they really wanted
Which is
to.
fine. I I don't want to be anti-human, but it's just sort of like, I don't know. If we create another, a sentient species that happens to be robot and it's better than us, like, I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
There's something almost beautiful in that. Like
Yeah.
like that's kind of like how, things work in the world, because like um I mean, look at what humans have done. It's not like humans have like taken our intelligence and been like, let's preserve everything and save all the animals. Some of us do. Some of us care. But most of
Yeah.
humanity, it's just like, screw it. Oh,
Yeah.
we lost 10,000 bugs last year, whatever, or species of bugs, whatever. So like we're literally doing this every day. So I don't understand why, like, if we created a robot species, we should be, surprised or shocked or even necessarily disappointed that they would do the same thing. I think that's the irony in all of this. But I'll be old enough where I don't care, and I don't have kids, so I'm out of this game, people. So, it's fine for me. But it's gonna be an interesting story to follow, so we'll continue doing that anyway. Oh, speaking of hilarious stuff, I guess I gotta do the Manscaped. Yes, we gotta read this week from Manscaped, my favorite company. Manscaped came out. I was actually surprised. I mentioned that they sent me a package. I got the package yesterday. I had no idea what was in it. Uh, and I was actually surprised when I opened it. They now have a Beer Hedger Pro Kit. This is actually something I'm actually surprised it took them this long to get into, because the pandemic, everybody was growing beards, including myself. Uh, they came out though, so they have a professional, like the Beer Hedger, and it's a trimmer meant for beard. So, what's the difference here? Well, this has the clip that goes on it, and you can remove it, of course, as well. But it has a little roller bar. Actually, I have it right here if you guys want to see it. It has this like little roller thing in it, and this dynamically changes the length of the trimming. And so if you have like a long beard or a short beard, you can pick all these different lengths on the fly and then just shave away. And other companies have had similar products like this, but this one is just like a whole other level in terms of quality. Like, it's really nice. It's water resistant, so you can take it into the shower. And I'm so glad to see this. It's Type C recharging. So
That
no
is awesome.
proprietary charger. You could just plug this into anything and it's going to recharge. You got little lights that come on to let you know that it's charged. And it works really well, actually. I do have a little kind of beard that comes in here and there. I haven't grown I can't pull off a full beard. I just don't think it's me. You guys let me know. But the Beer Hedger Pro Kit is 140 bucks. Although, if you use our code WCP, you get 20% off of that plus free shipping. So what do you get in that kit? Well, you get the beard hedger. You get an AC adapter and a USB cable. Look at that. They give you the adapter, unlike phone companies. So you get one in the box. You get the beard shampoo, beard conditioner, beard oil, beard balm, and a travel bag. Plus, there's a free gift, a beard accessory pack, which includes a beard brush, beard comb, and beard scissors. My God, you got, for 140 bucks plus 20% off, you're going to get everything you need for a beard. And I know a lot of people, if you're a guy and you're not using like beard shampoo and beard conditioner and beard oil, and maybe thinking like, why do I need that stuff? It's actually kind of cool. When I was growing, I had my beard for a while, I would use this stuff. The beard shampoo just works differently. You lather it up in the shower. It's just meant for that type of hair, which is thicker and everything, and it smells good. Same with the conditioner. Same with the beard oil. Beard oil gives it a nice, healthy shine, but it also doesn't let it dry out and just makes it look nicer and keeps your skin hydrated as well. Beard balm also allows you to shape things a little bit more. So if you have some, hairs that don't want to be straight, you can use the beard balm to help. And you got the scissors here as well to clip everything, and the beard brush, which if you've ever grown a beard before, things can get a little bit itchy. But yeah, I mean, I wish they had this 2 years ago. I'm actually, like I said, I'm surprised it took them this long to get in on the beard craze, because beards are still in. But if you're thinking of growing a beard or you already have one, this is an all-in-one kit. And like I said, I have other beard trimmers from other companies. None are as good quality as this one. This one has the nice rubber feel on it, and it's just yeah, I was actually really surprised by how nice this thing is. So, like I said, get 20% off and free shipping with the code WCP at manscaped.com. That's MANSCAPED, just one P. If you're like me, don't put in two P's. It's just one P. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com, and use code WCP for their Beer Hedger kits. One stroke, one guard, 20 lengths. Yeah, so it has 20 settings on it for trimming your beard. Really cool stuff. Good job, Manscaped. Always making quality products, and we're happy that they sponsored the podcast. But if you guys use any of this stuff, let me know what you think. All right, what happened in the news of Windows 11, Zach?
Yeah, so we had a new dev channel build this week. A couple of minor additions. They've added, or rather updated, the graphics settings page within the Windows Settings app. So now it looks a lot more like it should on Windows 11, which is really nice. They've also brought forward the GPU preference and auto HDR settings, so you can now get to those settings quicker, which is really quite nice. And they're also exploring a number of different UIs for the Windows Spotlight interface. So if you use Windows Spotlight in Windows 11, that little icon in the top right corner is, you can right click that and you can learn about the picture. They're exploring different interfaces for that. So now there's a much more rich interface which will allow you to actually select between the 4 different wallpapers of the week. You can see a brief description of the wallpaper you have selected, and as well as who owns the photo, and then even there below that you get different search results, so you can actually see, or search suggestions rather, you can see you could, for example, in the screenshot they provided, there's an option to map it, and then there's a bunch of different sort of facts that you can look up and stuff about the wallpaper, which is in this case an anteater, I believe, an anteater. So yes, so that's pretty interesting. Now what's more interesting about this build, which is 25281, is some of the hidden stuff in there. We talked last week about Microsoft working on a redesign of the rest of File Explorer. That's not really been added to in this build, but I can say that I have seen what they are working on now, and it's going to be awesome. I'm very excited for it. But there are some additional things here. So they've updated the sound output settings in the control panel, the control center. So if you click in there, you can now adjust the volume for individual apps, which you could do on Windows before via a legacy menu, but they're now adding that into control center, which is pretty nice. They are also working on something else, which I do not remember. What is it? It's lost me. That's so embarrassing. All right, we'll move on to the other thing I do know about. Notepad tabs is a thing now. It's official. That was something that leaked late last year, but it's now official in the Dev Channel build. It's rolling out now, and it works like you would expect. Along the top of the app are tabs, and you can switch between multiple text files within the same window. And even the tabs are more advanced than what is in File Explorer, because you can actually drag tabs out of one window to create another window, and you can drag other windows into each other to create one window. So the File Explorer can't currently do that, but the Notepad app can. So there you are.
I'm still a little bit confused. Well, I'm not really confused, but like it is a little weird. So you have Notepad, and that's getting tabs.
Yes.
And that's cool. But what about WordPad? I'm a WordPad user, and I'm curious about people like in the world, like, because there's 3 stages to text input basically on Windows. You have Notepad, which is strictly basic. You have WordPad, which gives you more formatting. You can embed things, and it's a little bit more rich. And then you have just full on Word, and like, which does everything. So like, I use WordPad. I don't know why I use it over Notepad. I think I just like sort of the options for font choices and bolding.
It's like a
and
light
stuff.
Word.
Yeah. And so like, are they going to do tabs on that? I don't see why they wouldn't. It almost has kind of like a tab structure if you look at the home file.
I'll tell you why I don't think they will. It's because they've not even updated it for Windows 11 yet, let alone additional Windows 11 stuff. Like, when Windows 11 launched, it got like Paint got updated, Notepad got updated, a bunch of inbox apps got updated, and WordPad didn't.
So I'm in the minority.
I think you might be. Yeah, I think Notepad trumps WordPad in this regard. But it would be nice.
We should do a series on that. Notepad versus WordPad. Who wins?
Yeah. I haven't even opened this app in years. I opened it just now to take a look, and it hasn't been touched. And you're right, it does look like a light version of Word, which is really, it's actually quite nice.
It is. Like, I don't get why more people, like, why would you use Notepad over this? I guess, Notepad strips formatting out, which I think people might like. And that's maybe why I know probably programmers and people use it for that reason. It's just, so that kind of makes sense right now. I use a really terrible, I'll use the Edge address bar sometimes to remove formatting, which is not, probably an efficient way of doing it. But I guess probably that's the reason why people use Notepad. But we should probably maybe do a story on that, and just I'm curious what the feedback would be.
Yeah, but maybe they could add a WordPad mode into Notepad and just have like a Notepad Advanced, so it gives you formatting and stuff. That would be nice.
I mean, that would make sense instead of having 2 separate apps.
Yeah, it really would.
2 different.
Which means it will never happen, and WordPad will continue to exist as this legacy thing that just sits in Windows and nobody except Dan uses.
Exactly. Yep. Fair enough.
All right. Well, yep, that's all I had for this week's Insider Builds. Not too much going on there, which is kind of the status quo for the Insider program over the last couple of months.
All right, what's going on with this Windows Unshipped series that you're doing here? What was this first one about, and what can we expect for further editions?
Yeah, so this is an idea I came up with a while ago where, I was thinking about a bunch of I've talked to lots of people. I've seen a whole bunch of stuff over the last X amount of years covering Windows, talking to people internally at Microsoft, externally, outside of Microsoft, who are privy to plans and projects that some of which obviously do ship, but a lot of it actually doesn't. Windows Sets is the perfect example of that. If everyone speaking of tabs in Notepad, Windows Sets was the idea that Windows would support tabs in every app. Every app would support tabs, and you'd be able to click on a new tab. It would open up Edge, and you'd be able to either launch apps from there or launch web pages. You can have a mishmash of web pages and different apps under one app window. It was a cool idea, but it never happened. Microsoft cancelled it, and that is just one public example of features that Microsoft consider but don't release. It happens a lot internally and to features that are never announced beforehand. And this week, I decided to. I say decided this week. I've been working on this series for a while, but the first sort of chapter of it came out this week, where I focused on a few things that I'd heard about for the Windows 10 start menu back in the day. So a thing called Pin in Place, which uses a UI paradigm very familiar to Windows Phone diehards. If everybody remembers the Lumia McLaren 3D Touch, when you'd hover over a tile, it would sort of explode into smaller tiles. That UI paradigm was something Microsoft wanted to recycle for Windows 10 in an effort to combat low usage numbers on the start menu itself. So Microsoft was seeing that users weren't taking the time to customize the Windows 10 start menu. So they were trying to figure out how to make it easier to customize, and this was one of the things that they came up with internally. You'd be able to hover over an empty space in the start menu, click on the plus button, and that mixed view exploding tile UI would appear with different suggestions for apps that you could pin to the start menu itself. That was an experiment they did internally. That was something they were working on, and it sadly never launched. And I thought it looked amazing when I was first shown it. I thought, wow, that's amazing. And I was very excited for it. It just never came. And that happens a lot. Another thing that they're working on for the start menu was a thing called Places. The idea, and this is something that I'm going to talk more about in the next chapter of Windows Unshipped, around the taskbar and Action Center. There was a massive effort to clean up the Windows 10 taskbar in the 2018 timeframe, I think it was. If you remember, the Windows 10 taskbar was very cluttered by default around that time, because it had things like the wide search box, it had all those different system icons pinned by default, Task View, Cortana, Edge, and then on the system tray side, it had My People, and all the other system tray icons that are normally sitting there, including the Action Center. The taskbar was very cramped, and on devices with small screens, it was a real problem. So there was a big effort internally to try and clean up the taskbar. Again, we'll talk more about that next week. But one thing they were considering was moving some of those system elements on the taskbar into the start menu and call them Places. So the My People Flyout, for example, or the Windows Ink Workspace, instead of accessing them from the taskbar, you'd access them from the hamburger menu in the start menu. That was another thing they were sort of considering at the time that just never shipped as well. It's really interesting that a lot of this stuff they were working on to improve the Windows UX just never came to be. And I was never able to figure out why these two things never shipped. I think my theory is that it's because a lot of their resources were pulled to Windows Core OS, which was a massive effort at the time, and Windows Desktop just sort of was left by the wayside almost, which is a shame. And especially if the stuff they were working on wasn't cross-compatible with Windows Core, it didn't make sense for them to focus on stuff like that. So maybe that's why it didn't come. But yes, Windows Unshipped is this series that I'm going to try and do weekly, which will be just exploring stuff like this, features that I've heard about for Windows 10 over the last few years that I thought were pretty cool, that never saw the light of day. I do at one point plan to do a deep dive into the Continuum 2.0, I call it, a version of Continuum. We've kind of seen it when that build for the HP Linux 3 leaked years ago, but there were advancements to it even after that for devices like Andromeda that obviously never shipped. So I'm planning to get to do some stuff around that as well. As I mentioned, Taskbar Action Center stuff I will also be planning to do. I'd also love to do a segment on, or a chapter on, Project Neon, which was the redesign of Windows 10 with Fluent, which became the Fluent design system. They had real bold plans for that, which never saw the light of day. Yeah, Windows was supposed to look completely different by the time they were done, and obviously that never happened. So, yeah, that's the kind of stuff we're going to be exploring with this series as I publish more chapters over the next handful of weeks. But yeah,
Exciting stuff. Always good to have that insider information about what could have been, which is
yeah,
unfortunately a thing with Microsoft, but a company that large, they got a lot on their
yeah,
plate. I'm sure people, listen, if you work at that company, right? And sometimes your job is literally to pitch new ideas. Like that's your thing. And
yeah,
then it's got to go through a process, and that process may or may not result in it shipping. So it's a complicated task. I wouldn't even know. I'm fascinated by people who work on programming Windows. It's like, what do you do exactly? like like are you just in charge of like start menu? And it's like, yeah, it's like that's just what you kind of do. And you have to go through all this code. And I don't know. It's just like it's such a foreign thing to me because it's such a massive operating system that, it's just been built up over these years. They have to be so careful not to break anything.
yeah,
Uh, and like this is where Apple still benefits. They just have like their own hardware, so they know what they're working with, and they sometimes just obsolete their own hardware and just like, well, we're not going to make it work with that hardware anymore, and that's the end of that. And so their task is a lot easier. So things work better, quote unquote, on Apple, but yeah, Windows is caught up, I think, in a lot of ways in terms of stability. I think Windows 11, I've had way, way fewer problems on this version of Windows than any version of Windows I've ever had in my life,
yeah.
despite the fact it's technically more complicated.
I still see a lot of hate for Windows 11, and I just don't understand it. I think I hate
It's getting
people.
used to something that's kind of looks different. But like I said, this is the same thing. Every version of Windows, I don't recall a version of Windows that came out where people like was unanimous. Everybody was like, "Oh, they nailed it! It looks amazing." It's never like that. What always happens is Windows 12 will come out, and then people will be like, "Why? Windows 11 was awesome looking." And then they're gonna all hate on Windows 12, and then Windows 13 will come out, and everybody will love Windows 12, and then when Windows 13 is out, people will be reminiscing about how awesome Windows 11 was, and yeah, they should bring
Yeah.
back Windows 11. It's just it's I don't know. It's always like that. But I just ignore it and tune it out. So, turning to my e-ink editorial. So this was, I think I talked a little bit about this last week when we are going over things from Lenovo, but if not, let me recap. So Lenovo, of all the things they announced, the Think phone, which I'm super excited about, the dual screen PC, of course. One of the things they announced also is called Smart Paper. And I was kind of excited about this device because they showed me a prototype of this back over the summertime. Like, Lenovo does that sometimes with me, which is really kind of cool. So I got to see it and try it out. And they were looking for feedback, what we thought. I was like, dude, ship this. This is awesome. And what it is, it's basically like what the Kindle Scribe is. It's an e-ink reader that's about 10.3 inches in size. So it's a really nice, like the size of a legal size piece of paper. It's very thin. It's made out of a beautiful metal. It's got curved edges and feels really premium in the hand. And it has this like cool magnetic cover that goes on the back, and then it flips around like a book. And then like in that cover, they like hollowed out a section for the pen. And so like the pen sticks in there. So when you close it all up, like your pen will never come out. And this is something Amazon didn't even think of. Like with the Kindle Scribe, the pen can stick to the side, but that's just like on laptops. Like, yeah, it's cool. It's temporary. You put that in the bag, the pen is going to definitely come off. And Amazon doesn't give you the pen. You have to buy that separately, which kind of makes sense because some people may just want to use it as a Kindle reader. So you have to buy the pen separately, and there's two different pens, and then you have to buy the cover, which I forgot to do, so I had to go buy one. And so the cover I got has a pen loop on it, which helps. So now I definitely won't lose it. But a pen loop, in terms of technology, is pretty that's pretty, I don't know, not very intuitive, or not intuitive, but original, I should say. So Lenovo did this. Now, the difference between the Kindle Scribe and Lenovo's version is Lenovo's runs Android. And it's basically open source, and it runs EPUB books. So it doesn't run the Kindle books, but you could run the Kindle app on it, right? And do things that way. You can basically sideload any APK you want on this thing, including, I guess, OneNote if you want to try. Although I'm not sure the performance is going to be as good natively. But it has a really good tactile feel on it. They spent a lot of like research on to make it feel like a piece of paper. and make it kind of feel gritty when you're writing on it, which I tried and I could attest to. It feels really cool. And they have their pen stuff is more advanced than the Scribe, so it detects pressure for one. And you can do things like in OneNote where you can take notes, but you can also record audio with the device. And then later you can hit playback and it's going to redo your notes for you in real time as the audio is playing. So you can actually see when you took the note. Like OneNote does this already, but it's kind of cool that they did that. You need a Bluetooth headset to hear it because you're not going to have a speaker on this thing. But it's supposed to ship sometime in spring for around $400. So why I'm excited about this? So I got the Scribe, and in fact, I was at this event using my Scribe to take the notes on this new smart paper, and I was able to compare them, and I have photos of both of them up there, and they're both really good devices. But as a journalist, quote unquote, I'm not formally trained as one, but obviously I do reporting. At these events, I found this device absolutely just awesome to use. I could just flip it, and I was just right in my document that I need to be in. It was like instant on. I'd have to go through, any menus or anything. Writing on it feels like I'm writing on a piece of paper. The ink latency is really good now. Like it really does feel like just using on a Windows PC. And I just love taking notes on it. It looked great. The resolution's 300 ppi on it. It's like I would have killed to have this in grad school or even college or high school to take notes on. I think it's just a really, really cool technology. And if you're, a student, I mean, how are you not going to go buy one of these things? I think it'd be so cool to have in class. And just bring that and like the book if you need to, and just take notes and just write like that the whole time. And so, like I said, it's coming out spring. It's around $400, but it includes everything, the cover and the pen, which is kind of cool. And so the reason I brought this all up, what does this have to do with Microsoft? Well, the question is like, why does Microsoft not have a device like this? Like, why hasn't the Surface team made an e-ink device that's built around OneNote and Office? Like this thing could run OneNote natively. They could have built a version for it. I don't know what platform they could use on it. They could use either a custom one like what Kindle does, or they can use Android like what Lenovo does. But they could do that. Building the custom platform and building a custom OneNote would be a lot of work. Don't get me wrong. OneNote's a very complicated program. But if they really wanted to, they could do that, right? And so having OneNote natively on a device like this that also loops into OneDrive, through the Wi-Fi connection, you can even put LTE in there if you wanted to, and have access to your Word documents. You can have your calendar so that, like, when you turn off the device, the static screen could just be your calendar for the day. Could you imagine that? Like it would just be so you just glance and glow at the thing, glance and go. Or you can have your email on there in the inbox, so it just shows you your emails coming in. Like there's so much like cool stuff that could be done with this, and you can even leave a section of that screen blank just for note taking. Just scribble yourself a quick note, kind of like what they had this idea with Surface Duo. Now I know like people may be asking, like, well, why not use a Surface Pro 9? And I could have done that. The reason I didn't was because one, I wanted to try the Scribe because I paid money for it. And there's something nice about having a device that only has like one or two purposes. I said this before, those Lenovo glasses that just show you that single display when you plug into a computer or your phone. It's not AR, it's not VR. All it does is give you a holographic display in front of you that no one else can see. And it does it really well. Like that purpose-driven device is great because there's no question. Like if you either need it or you don't need it. And if you need it, you're going to love it. Same with Kindle Scribe. It's great because it's an amazing e-reader if you're in the Amazon system and you love reading books. It's fantastic for that. And for note taking, it's pretty good. It could get better, and they're going to through software updates. But like it does those two things for me really, really well. And they're adding word support and everything like that. But it's not going to be like a Microsoft device kind of thing. But like sometimes having a device where all you do is pick it up and all it is for Office. You can read Word, you can read OneNote, you can do PowerPoint, you can see your email, your calendar. It's thin. This thing weighs like a pound, so it's lighter than a laptop. You're going to get way better battery life. The battery life goes for weeks on these devices, not hours. It's just easier to use. It's lighter. It's easier to carry around. And I think, something like a Surface Pro 9, yeah, I could use that to take notes on using OneNote. That's true. But then I have to worry about my battery. Hopping into it is still a thing. I got to turn it on. I got to log into Windows, do the Windows Hello. I got to launch the app, full screen it. Like those are little extra steps I don't need to do with this kind of device. The other thing is, I will say the Surface Pro series is really good for artists, engineers, people who do like professional sketching and drawing and want to actually have like a real hardcore inking experience. I don't need that. I need basic. I want pen and paper type experience. And that's what this does. So there's no reason why I couldn't have that device and a computer. And that's what I did at CES. I used a Kindle Scribe and I had the ThinkPad X13s. Between those two devices, my battery went all day. I carried no chargers. They were both super light, super compact. I was like this, and I used my Pixel 7 as the camera. I couldn't have been happier in terms of all this technology and how well it worked. And I just wish Microsoft would kind of get in on this. And knowing that it's cheaper. Like if you work in an office and you're going to meetings, like this device will cost you what, $300-400? That's way cheaper than a laptop or a Surface Pro device. And if you're a student, same thing. Could you imagine schools could buy this for way cheaper, like $300-400? They can even make a smaller version, bring down the cost on that. But high school students could be getting these. College students can get these. Microsoft could sell it with their Microsoft 365 subscription. So it's like, you pay it off every month a little bit, or you get a discount because you're using the device. Like, how are they not? Did they think about this and decided it's just not worth it? Maybe the math isn't there. I don't know. But to me, this stuff seems like why would you not do this? Zach, I mean, what are your thoughts on all this? Am I crazy? Or because everybody that responded to me on Twitter said, yeah, I would buy that in a heartbeat. What do you think?
I don't know, because we have seen e-ink note-taking devices, and I don't know if any of them have been super successful, right? It's one of those things where I think people
what
like
ones
the
have we
idea.
seen?
Remarkable, I think, is one that takes
Remarkable
pen.
is very popular. Remarkable
Is
2
it?
is
I've
like,
never seen one ever.
well, that doesn't mean anything. Remarkable 2, they spent a lot on advertising. I'll say that, but the
Sure.
Remarkable 2
No,
is a very popular device.
I can't dispute it. But in that case, well, yeah, it is. I think it's because Windows, if I'm honest, I think Windows just isn't optimized for that sort of display. What would be really nice? I don't know
I
if
wouldn't want. I don't need Windows on it. I don't
you
want
want
Windows.
Android.
No, that's why I said it could either be a custom OS, sort of like what Kindle is,
Yeah.
or it could run Android. Like
So
they
it would,
can do
it would be
either
Android.
or.
Microsoft wouldn't make a custom OS for it. It would have to be Android. It would be an optimized version of Android. In that case, yeah, but I think what Microsoft would really prefer, and I don't know if this tech exists, is a hybrid display that can switch to e-ink when it's not in full color mode. That would be great for like a Surface Go, because then it could switch off that, the power hungry display and then display the battery optimized e-ink display. And also, what's great about e-ink is that when the device is off, what's on the screen sort of stays there, right? If I remember correctly from the Kindles, that's what they used to do, and that was pretty cool. And also, sunlight readability is also great. Yeah.
Yep.
Excuse me. I don't know why they've not done this. I think it's because, like I said, they can't. I don't think they want to do an e-ink only device. I think they'd want to do one that can do both, and I don't think Microsoft is able to figure that out. Outside of putting an e-ink screen on the back of a tablet, which I guess could be done. You could flip it over.
Well, I mean, Lenovo did that.
That's what I'm saying.
The Lenovo Twist that's coming out.
It's funny. I will say it does kind of seem like Microsoft has stopped caring about pen input a bit. Like back when Surface first started, that pen was a big deal for the Surface. Like, oh yeah, look at all these improvements to the pen. And outside of the Surface Slim Pen 2, which really didn't do much to the technology, it was just more of a design change. There's really not been any innovations on the Surface Pen in a number of years. Even Apple, I think, has done more to the Surface Pen to the Apple Pen than Microsoft has done to the Surface Pen. So I wonder if maybe the reason they haven't done it is because they don't see pen input as a.
They're dumb. Then they're stupid, because I'm telling you, everybody I showed this device to and like tried it out, thought it was awesome. And a lot of people are like, yeah, because again, it has a single purpose. It's just for note taking, which is what a lot of people do. I don't like the Surface Pen stuff because it's overkill for me. I can't draw to save my life, and I don't care about all the pen sensitivity and the inking and the accuracy. Yeah, for artists, good for them. I'm glad that they have something out there, but I don't care about that stuff. I want basic note taking inking in my life. And to make a device that is an extension of Microsoft 365, OneNote, Word, and all that kind of stuff with OneDrive built in, yeah, and I definitely don't want it running Windows, but to make a custom, even an operating system. Listen, if Amazon can do it on Kindle and be successful, I don't see why Microsoft, I say that in jest, why Microsoft couldn't make it, but, we know their history here. But like, it's not that technically complicated if they really want to do it. But I don't see why they wouldn't want to, since they're pushing Microsoft 365 and the cloud and their services so much. Make a device built for that that's low cost efficient, has one job. Enterprise would eat it up. Journalists would all use it, and schools would use it. And those are huge, massive markets that are also going to be cyclical. People are going to come back and buy new ones. And I hear people saying in comments like, well, maybe they're waiting on Color E-Ink. Sorry, folks, Color E-Ink exists already. The Lenovo ThinkPad or ThinkBook Twist, whatever they're calling it, that has dual screens. One's like an OLED display on the inside, and the other one is e-ink on the outside, and the screen twists around so you can use it either way. That's a Color E-Ink display, and you can run full Windows on it. That's the point. You can flip it around and use the Color E-Ink as your window for Windows, and then you can go into like something like Microsoft Word, and then you can write for hours and barely use any battery life. So that's why Lenovo made that device. So, waiting for Color E-Ink is not an excuse. They can do that right now if they wanted to. I'm just saying there doesn't seem to be any interest in this, and I don't get it. Like, I sort of understand how, like, well, it might cannibalize a Surface Pro argument. But like I said, I'm not using the Surface Pro that much as is for pen and inking, because it's not as straight into the thing I need to do. Mm-hmm. And Surface Duo was supposed to be kind of like that. I've used Duo like that before, but Duo's displays are just frankly too small. It's really hard. It's like writing on a couple Post-its. Like, it's nice for a quick note, but imagine trying to be in an interview and just keep writing. It's like really tiny. Surface Go, yes, there's a picture of me using Surface Go for this purpose, and it's like, it's fine, it's cool, but then you get into the battery life thing, right? Until they solve battery life. When I'm at CES, you have to understand, like, I take a bag, I get up, I leave the hotel like at 8 a.m. I'm not back sometimes at 6 p.m. I'm walking around all day. I don't necessarily have time to sit down and recharge, or sometimes I can't find an outlet because I'm in either hotels, I'm in lobbies, I'm in casinos. I don't have time to plug in a battery, or I don't want to carry around a lot of extra equipment I don't need to. That's why I use the e-ink device and a ThinkPad with the ARM processor. Those covered me for battery. I had zero issue. I don't know. I think they're kind of dumb for this. If they wanted to get into inking for this category, I think they should absolutely do this. They have the know-how. They have the capabilities. They could make a really cool-looking device, and it could be a 100% extension of Microsoft 365 subscription where they make a ton of money off of these things. But I don't know. That's just me. That's my rant. I'm done. Microsoft, you're dumb for not doing this, and I'll just stick with that. Maybe I'll run to Panos at some point, and he can tell me why I'm wrong, or I'll be curious, because maybe I am. I leave that room. I don't know all the insides. Maybe they did the math, like I said, and it's just not worth it. But I like to think I'm right. I think it's, people ask me what's the most interesting technology that I've had. It's this, because, Remarkable has been out for a little while. Remarkable 2 came out, but it's only been the last couple of years that the refresh rate of e-ink got to the point where you could do drawing on it, where it wouldn't feel terrible. And that's why it's been slow to come out, while e-ink's been out for a while. But now the refresh rate is getting good enough, and it's going to continue to improve, where and now they have backlights. It's not backlit, actually. It's like front lights. So the Kindle Scribe, you can use it in pitch black darkness, and it lights up. And then it even has color temperature, so you can make it yellow or white, so it's easier on your eyes. Like, the technology's really kind of evolved. And like I said, Color E-Ink exists. Yeah, it doesn't look like a 4K OLED, but it's color. It's Color E-Ink. It's cool. So if you want that, that can be done too. I don't know. That's it for me. That's the rant. Whew. All right. Do we have a thing of the week? Thing of the week. Zach, you got one?
I don't think I do. Okay, so I guess I watched the first episode of The Last of Us, which is a TV adaptation of the video game, which it was a brilliant video game. And episode 1 is really quite good. That's all I'll say. Don't spoil anything.
Yeah, I haven't watched that yet. That did get a lot of attention. In fact, we have a good editorial written about it, basically saying how that's kind of nailed the theme of the video game and how good it is. And it's sadly what could have been for Halo or Resident Evil, both of which I would say Resident Evil got really panned. Halo was very meh, kind of like it wasn't terrible, but it's definitely not great. Uh, yeah, HBO, right? HBO,
Yep.
they make some really good shows. Like well, HBO Max has been one of the best investments, in terms of monthly subscriptions that I really like. And yes, I'll have to kind of check that out for me. Oh, let's see. Oh, well, I have a couple of new things coming in. So there will be reviews for stuff. We're working on some review formats. I did just get the new a new Lenovo laptop in that I had to get just because it's absurd. It's called a Lenovo P16. Zach, this is the photo I shared before. And this is a workstation laptop. So consumers, you can check out at this point right now. But this thing is just like, it is so powerful. It's an Intel Core i9 12th gen HX processor. So that's the desktop series that's just been modified to run on mobile. So it's got that. It's got an NVIDIA RTX A5500 graphics card, which is, again, this is for professional use. I don't know what that's equivalent to. I think it's around like probably a 4070, 4080. I don't know. It's really powerful. It's got 64 gigs of DDR5 RAM, 2 terabyte SSD, and the display is a 16-inch, basically 4K. It's 3840 by 2400 OLED touch anti-glare display, and I think it even supports pen technically, and it weighs just 6.5 pounds. But I'm just fascinated that that much computing power could go into a workstation. So this is for like CAD and scientists and people doing like really heavy processing. So I'll do kind of a thing about that and do some benchmarks. I'll also say I can't tell you when the review will come out, but I did get that not Lenovo, the Razer. Oh, now I'm forgetting the name of it, the speaker system. I always forget their snake names, but the one that has the sensor on it that detects your physical presence and then shapes the sound around you. And I said it's the best sounding soundbar you're ever going to hear in your life. So that just arrived. So I'm going to have to start playing around with that. But yeah, I'm telling you, the new tech that's coming out, even though no one's going to be able to afford to buy it apparently, or not, it's looking really cool. And I still have a couple laptop reviews I got to catch up on. We're kind of reformatting our laptop reviews. We're going to kind of make them more interesting. So you'll probably see that over the next couple weeks, how we go forward with that. But yeah, I think that's about it for me. I'm sure more stuff will be coming in. I guess I could mention my new watch, but no one likes watches here, so that's fine. Totally understandable. No, this watch is just so cool. I put it up on Twitter. The reason I have this watch is because it tracks a second time zone. So right now I can look and see that it's little after 7:40 for Zach.
Yeah.
And the reason I have that is not to track Zach necessarily, but a lot of our writers are UK based. And so I need to be aware, like it's around dinner time for them. It's like 6 p.m. That's why they're not on the story, or, it's 2 a.m. Like that's the joke the other night. Zach was on Telegram and was writing stuff. I'm like, and I look at my watch. I'm like, dude, it's 3 a.m. Why are you up? And I wouldn't have necessarily known that off the top of my head. And I should say our parent company, Future, is UK based. So a lot of the meetings I take are with British folk who are on their time zone. I want to be kind of aware, like, oh, it's almost 5 o'clock for you. You should get going. So it's a GMT type watch, but it's a 12-hour GMT. And I just find it clever. Yeah, I could do it with an Apple Watch. I could probably do something with a Samsung. But there's something just cool about having a mechanical watch that does it all. Not to mention, they pump this thing. This is what Zinn does. That's the name of this thing. It's a Zinn, SINN. They pump it full of nitrogen gas inside so that the oxygen doesn't degrade the oil. And then there's a capsule called a copper sulfate capsule that goes in on the side that pulls out moisture. And this thing can operate in minus 45 degrees Celsius weather. They say the chronograph will continue working at that temperature or at plus 80 degrees Celsius, which, yeah, I'll be dead, but the watch will keep running. So I'm just fascinated. Just German engineering. I'm just like, you guys are insane. But there you go. That's my thing of the week, too. Yeah. No, Sarah, this is the one I put up on Twitter. This is the one I put up on Twitter a couple weeks ago. So that I was showing off because it's so cool looking, the dial. But there you go. I won't go on anymore about that. You can follow me at Twitter at Daniel_Rubino. Follow Zach at ZACBOWDEN. Ask us questions there. Interact with us. Tell us what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. As always, we're going to do some Q&A with the audience now for the live audience. If you're listening to this recorded, you don't get to hear that, but please join us every Friday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time on our YouTube channel, where you can join in the live chat with us and ask us questions at the end of the episode. As always, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time. Take care, everyone.
It's the weekend, for me anyway.
Yeah, and we're just over an hour on that one. Not too bad.
Yeah, nice and short. So yes, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the chat. We will hang out for a few minutes and do our best to provide answers if we have them. And if we don't have them, that's a shame. Will Windows Unshipped just be about Windows 10 or earlier as well? For now, the scope I have is only Windows 10 stuff. It could certainly go back to earlier stuff. I know there's been lots of discoveries of pre-release Windows builds and their hidden features. Windows 8, I think, has a few. We could definitely explore that at some point, but this initial run I have, I kind of I originally envisioned 6. I don't know if I'm actually going to do all 6. I might combine some of them. Will be Windows 10 stuff, and then if the series does well, which I don't know if it will, we will think about doing other versions of Windows in the future. Are you worried if Windows Unshipped series would make people hesitant to give you leaks or tips? No, because one, I'm asking permission from all the people who have these materials, and two, this stuff is so old at this point, it doesn't matter. Anything that I'm told I can't share, I won't share. That's as simple as that. It will never happen. So, yeah. If I can't share something, the other thing I'll always present is, how about if I recreate it? Is that possible? And sometimes I get a yes, sometimes I get a no. And if it's a no, then it's a no, and I can only describe it to you.
Dan, can you talk more about all the new OLEDs from CES? I didn't see too many, to be honest. I'm not like, the display stuff is kind of, Samsung has, there's two, right. So Samsung and LG make all the OLEDs in the world, basically. At least all the cutting edge stuff and the latest things, curved and all that, and higher refresh rates. They both compete against each other. So, what Samsung has done and LG, they're often very similar, just kind of depends on what you want. Samsung has obviously that 49-inch curved OLED display, which is massive. And then I said, LG has one as well that I'm really excited about trying out. So in terms of laptops, yeah, it's kind of hit and miss. You're still a lot of options for OLED. That's the thing I see now, is a lot of laptops give you the option to get an OLED display, but it's not like default at that, which is good too, because then everybody wants OLED. But I mentioned a couple of podcasts ago that the big change in OLED was the fact that companies like Samsung used to mandate the color profile for OLED when you use them in a laptop, which is why I used to find OLED just so overbearing. It was so just intense to stare. It looked great. Like the first 30 seconds, like, oh my God, the colors. But then after like 10, an hour staring at it, your eyes are like, Jesus, so too much saturation. Samsung reneged on this, like they due to pressure from the OEMs. The OEMs can now do their own color profiles and tune the thing. So OLED looks a little bit more natural now. It looks a little bit more normal. And so that's why I kind of like it a lot better. But the biggest thing I would think is not even OLED. It's, like I said, it's Razer's Blade 16 with the dual function mini LED display. I think and I'm going to do an article maybe this weekend on that, about why I think that's like one of the coolest things, because that's the one that switches between 4K and 120 hertz or full HD and 240 hertz. It could do both in the same display. You just got to switch the mode by rebooting the PC. That means if you're a gamer, you can get super fast refresh rates and still get a full HD experience. But then if you want to go edit photos or video, or just use it as a nice computer, you can get 4K 120 hertz. Up till this point, you had to pick one computer or the other for that. But Razer solved that. I think that's absolutely amazing and a huge advancement in terms of computers. And plus, mini LED is pretty awesome looking. It looks, this thing hits 1,000 nits of brightness. Like it looks as good, if not better, than OLED. So I think that's impressive technology there.
Any word on deprecating control panel? It's happening. Every new release of Windows, a little bit more that control panel's chipped away. Did you find out if the new File Explorer is still for Next Valley or earlier? So what they're currently working on is for this year. So it won't be Next Valley. It will be, as far as I'm aware, it's supposed to ship in the 2023 timeframe. Obviously, things could get delayed. There are elements to it that will be 2024, but the bulk of it, the big sort of update to the rest of the interface will be, or at least it's planned to be, 2023. So yeah, that'll be this year, hopefully.
Man, kind of sucks. Tapbots is calling it quits for Tweetbot.
Yeah.
So with Twitter,
yeah,
they blocked all third-party apps, and so all these companies now are either shutting down or they're pivoting towards Mastodon, which is nice. They're going to come out with an app for that, but that audience is way smaller than Twitter, so that's unfortunate. Completely unnecessary too.
With all the foldables rumored or expected to be released this year, doesn't it look like Duo 3 is doomed, if not out by the end of the year? I mean, it's not competing this year. So I don't really, you can't really call it doom. This is a conversation we had last week, but essentially it comes down to the foldables market is still very niche. It's still very up and coming. There are not many contenders, especially in the States. In the States, it's currently just Samsung, and by the end of this year, it will be Pixel, assuming the Pixel doesn't get delayed any further. So that's only 2 competitors. Microsoft will be the 3rd in the US, assuming Xiaomi or Honor or Oppo don't decide to start shipping foldables in the US. They could, in which case competition will really heat up. But outside of that, I think Microsoft is really only viewing the competition as Samsung and possibly Google. So I don't know. I think it's too early for us to be saying that Samsung already owns the foldable market. I think that's a ridiculous thing to say. And it's okay for other companies to try and compete. It's healthy for Microsoft to want to compete, even if they are, air quotes, late to the game. Now, I saw somebody else asking about the Fold 5 and rumors around it being a 360-degree foldable. If that is what that is, I will eat a hat, because there's no way Samsung is shipping a Fold 5 this year with a 360-degree hinge. What you're referring to, I think, is Samsung Display, which did show off a prototype 360-degree foldable single-screen device, but that's Samsung Display. Their prototype is primarily around the display. That the external part of that device isn't something that that Samsung is planning to ship. This year's Fold 5, I'm almost certain, will be a 180-degree hinge. Just because it can be done doesn't mean it makes sense in a end user product because of pricing primarily, whether that be price to the end user or price to build at the factory, or even it might even be too complicated to build at scale currently. There's lots of different factors that go into it. Like I said, I'd be very shocked if the Fold 5 is a 360-degree folding single screen phone.
By the way, the news is Twitter's made it official that no more third-party apps.
Yeah, I know, they suck.
Yep. such garbage. Transparency builds trust, he says, and they just shut it off and waited 6 days to even say anything about it. Garbage.
Any word on the Surface Go changing screen size to be more like a smaller version of the Pro 9? I do not think so. I guess what you're referring to there is, will they have the thinner bezels on the side? I don't think so.
Right.
I think the Surface Go will remain roughly where it is currently.
OLED, is there any problem with burn-in these days, or is it something from before? No, I think they mostly fix that with pixel refreshing, and at least I haven't heard any complaints from people, and there doesn't seem to be wide reporting about it. But I know some companies have, Lenovo has things that dim the different OLED parts of your screen, including the start bar, and so there's kind of these solutions. But I really haven't seen people saying that they're having an issue with it. I know obviously that was a big concern years ago, but the new panels seem to be better at refreshing the pixels so they don't burn in. Either way, I think mini LED is probably more interesting long term, but
do you think that Microsoft could release some technical/developer preview of Next Valley much earlier if it introduced a lot of under the hood changes that would affect the way Windows works? I don't think earlier is something they would do. I think they would announce the whole thing in June and then ship it in October. I really do think that's how they would do it. They, I don't know, because how did they do Windows 10X? I don't know. This is all technically part of a larger story that I am currently working on. I don't know is the answer to that. I don't know if it would be something that they would want to do a developer preview for ahead of time. It could be necessary, but at the same time, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know is the answer to that. I don't know at this time.
Ooh, speaking of more cuts, Regal Cinemas is declared bankruptcy. And they're going to shut down
Oh, dear.
39 locations in the United States, which makes sense. Even I don't go to the movies much anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, why?
Pandemic killed it.
Yeah, why be with people when I could be on
When
my
is
couch?
Yeah. When is Next Valley due? I missed Zach's details about that. So Next Valley is currently sort of planned for 2024, late 2024, as far as I'm aware. A lot of people have decided to call it Windows 12. I never once referred to it as Windows 12 in my article. I just called it the next major release of the Windows client, as far as I'm aware, or the next version of the Windows client. And that's because that's the terminology they used in the internal documents. So I basically just copied what they were saying internally. It was other people and other outlets who decided to decipher that as Windows 12, which it may be, but I was never told it would be called Windows 12. But we'll have to wait and see. I am hearing that the 2024 release of Windows, assuming they're able to actually deliver what they intend, will be a big update. So it could warrant the increment of the version number from 11 to 12.
What's the number one thing Windows still lacks? I don't know.
I don't know. Windows
Windows
still lacks a light version of itself. Like Windows is really quite heavy when you compare it to other operating systems, especially the likes of iPad OS and Android. It needs to be lighter, and Chrome OS for that matter. They need to be able to scale it down, and so it performs better at the low end. Windows on low end is still pretty bad, and it needs to be better, and that is something I believe they are working on.
Yeah.
For Windows 12 or Next Valley. See, you've got me calling it Windows 12. Foldable support, that's a great one. Gus in the chat there. Foldable support.
Sure.
Yeah, that would be nice.
But that's
nice.
That's so like tiny at this point.
For now,
I agree. Like they need to focus on that going forward. But like right now, like if you polled 9 out of 10 people on the street about Windows, they wouldn't say foldable support, right? I think the biggest problem with Windows is not so much the operating system. I think it's kind of what you were saying before with the one, it doesn't operate great on lower end hardware. So that's the issue. Do you try to make it run better on lower end hardware? Yeah, but we also need just better hardware. And I think the better hardware is the issue, right? We need like what Apple is doing with those ARM processors. If you get that, like if I could say, here's a Microsoft laptop, it gets 18 hours of real world battery life and runs as fast as a Core i9 processor, I think people won't have many complaints about Windows itself. Like I think they're gonna be like, yeah, this is great.
Windows updates for installing major new versions of Windows should be faster. That's another thing that I would like them to work on. And I know they have been trying to for a long time, and every sort of attempt that they come up with never ends up shipping. So hopefully they actually get around to doing it with Windows Next Valley. All right, last few questions. Final call for questions. Then it is time to head off. Surface Studio 3 redesigned this year. I did not think it was coming before the layoffs, and I certainly don't think it's coming now. No Surface Studio 3 redesign this year. I think any of those sort of very high-end, very expensive Surface products will be pushed back. And also, I don't think the Studio 3 redesign was even expected this year anyway, so no. The Studio 2 Plus only just came out. I think we're going to be stuck with that for at least a couple of years.
Oh, Cobra Kai will end with the 6th and final season.
Everything's ending.
I know, seriously. I guess they'll finish season 5, so.
Didn't fast updates ship with HoloLens? I believe yes, but I'm referring to devices people actually use. I think Xbox. No, Xbox doesn't have fast updating. Xbox takes forever. I say forever. It takes at least 5 minutes to do an update. Or rather, at most 5 minutes. It's usually shorter. Zach, do you still use Cortana? I do not. There is no reason for me to be using Cortana. I don't even use any assistant. I disable Google Assistant on my phone. I don't use it, so. So we should look at the fall event instead of spring for Surface. Look, with the layoffs, everything's quite uncertain right now. I did have an idea as to what might have been shipping this year. I know there's a Surface Laptop SE2 on the horizon, and I think that's still on the cards for this spring. Surface Go 4 was on the cards for this spring, and I think it could still happen. But that will be later in the spring, I think, maybe even early summer. And then obviously Pro 10 and Laptop 6, I guess you'd call it. I don't know about Laptop 6, but Pro 10 is quite likely as far as I'm aware. And also Laptop Studio 2 was also possible for this spring, but I think that might have been pushed back to the fall. We'll have to wait and see, I guess.
I want Laptop Studio with that 12th or 13th gen. It's going to be killer.
Yeah. If they push it back to the fall, then I guess it would certainly almost definitely be 13th gen.
Yeah, that'll be 13th gen. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Any Surface team layoffs? Not. So I saw one or two Surface people at the manager at a sort of manager level being laid off. I don't think I've seen any Surface engineers being laid off yet. But again, I fingers crossed, no more layoffs in the Surface division or anywhere. But sadly, it's going to happen because Microsoft said that layoffs start now and will continue through the end of March. So just because people haven't been laid off yet doesn't mean they won't be laid off. But crossing my fingers that the Surface team at least isn't affected too badly. Will the Go 4 use ARM? I have heard that there is an ARM version of the Surface Go 4 does exist. Whether it ships or not is another question entirely. But as of last year, the plan was for the Surface Go 4 to be an ARM-based device. If Microsoft were going to make cuts to the Surface portfolio, which devices would you see surviving? Obviously, Surface Pro. I think the Surface Go and the Surface Laptop Go would survive. I think they do quite well for Microsoft. I see them in marketing materials quite a lot. The main Surface Pro, and I think Surface Laptop would be okay. The ones that would obviously be the concern are Surface Studio, Surface Duo, and even Surface Hub to an extent, I think. But yeah, I don't think they're cutting lines. I really don't.
One thing that Google New York City did was test their badges if the light went out red. Yeah. So I saw that tweet too. That story's mixed. They technically all got emails, but some people got to work before they checked their emails, in which case that experience happened to them when they would go into the building and that wasn't done on purpose. That wasn't the point where they were like, oh, we're going to tell everybody they're fired by when they show up to the building. If their badge doesn't work, they know they're fired. That wasn't the mandate. They just didn't get their email. I'm not saying that Google is a saint for the way they handled things, but that story's, again, a little bit not completely accurate.
Will we ever
get comments back? Yes. We're working on it. I don't have an ETA on it, but it's something I'm pushing for really, really hard. We are told they will be coming back. I just don't have the dates for it yet. But yes, we're very keen on getting our comments back.
All right, I think with that, it is time to head off. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. We'll be back next week. Follow us on Twitter. We'll keep you updated when we go live. But until then, we will see you next time. Bye.